everyone, Dan McJunkin here with SimontonTexas.com. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. The title of this video pretty much says it all. The biggest question is, was it true? And what I'm going to show you in this video is rather disturbing, especially considering we need to be able to trust our public officials 100%. And when something that is said causes us to believe we're being told untrue things, it makes us question other things. Certainly gives some foundation to some of the criticisms that have been stated in the community and some of the things that have even been witnessed from the mayor. I will dispense with a whole lot of prep, but this is what it really begins with. Let me play this.
I mean, is there some way that somebody's going to stop us from voting on a tax rate and a budget?
No, nobody's going to stop you from voting.
Okay.
But if you don't come to an agreement,
We don't have to.
But
We don't have to.
you have to have 4 people.
you do have to have a supermajority on the budget. So we need 4 people to agree.
4. Supermajority.
4 people.
All right, so you heard the term supermajority. And what you heard was something said where the first, Kelly Matula, states that there have to be 4 people agree. Now, the council is a 5-member board, intentionally an odd number, so that pretty much every vote, if everybody shows up, you'll get a positive or a negative result. You won't get a neutral result. If there were only 4 people in the room, the mayor could vote and break a tie. But generally speaking, a supermajority, as in the Senate, in order to defeat a presidential veto, a supermajority is necessary. That means more than not just 50%. Technically, a supermajority is usually 60%. In the case of a council, it has to be 4 members of a 5-member council. When you're a type A general law city, such as Simonton, with a aldermanic form of government. So the point is that they use the term they, first Kelly Matula, and then the mayor interrupts, saying that in order to vote, and in this case, vote on the budget for Simonton for the fiscal year 2024 through 2025, that it will require, this would be by statute, by law, meaning that if you cannot get a supermajority, then the rest of this happens, and she's going to describe that. I'm going to come back to this in a minute. But let me just say that what they said was wrong. It's not true. Not at all true. After having reviewed documents from the state, from Texas Municipal League, even hearing of conversations with the city's own attorney, this element is in dispute and is in no way true. So I want to show you some other things from the meeting, but that's the backdrop that makes me doubt the veracity of much of what has been said by this mayor, at least in the last now 4 workshop meetings, wherein she's denying certain revenues be counted in the budget. She's denying that monies are being hoarded. In fact, I actually have her saying that, and let me cue that up for you. Here it is. Here's one.
So the money doesn't go away. We're not just hoarding it for some unknown reason down the road, but it's long-term planning about emergencies, growth, repairs, projects that we don't quite know yet today, but they're part of our vision elements and our comprehensive plan.
Okay. So really what she's saying is, we're taking money from you. We don't have a capital improvement plan. We don't really put that money into space holders called protected funds so that the funds can grow. We're just putting them in a giant slush fund. And that's really what it amounts to. You can have savings, and savings are good. And the type of savings this mayor has asked for is $500,000 for general purposes. This is what she said in past meetings, recent past meetings. She's asked for $500,000 to be set aside for the next emergency. That's good. They actually discussed that type of thing here. And nobody's denying that emergency money should be set aside. The biggest problem is that every year the city of Simonton undercalculates their revenue and they overestimate their need for expenses, knowing that more money is going to come in every year than they need, and that money is just going to get swept off into the bank. Now, there's a discussion of that. Courtney Cox brings that up very strongly. And then on the expense side, they pad a lot of categories with costs that are never going to be realized, with expenses such as miscellaneous, such as technology funds. And they actually hit 4 different departments with technology funds of, I think, in the order of $60,000 in the mayor's budget. I believe Courtney's budget cuts most of that out to use it. What are we really going to buy? Technology is generally going to be, maybe computers, maybe some cameras for City Hall, but something that council approves. The mayor has presented no budget for, like, I want to get 6 cameras and I want to get 2 computers and I want to get a television. Nothing like that. It's not said what the money's going to get spent on. And so at the end of the year, if the money hadn't been spent, then that money just goes into the bank. And yeah, it's available to a future council, but it was taken from you in the calendar fiscal year. So these are issues that at least 3 of these council members are taking issue with, saying if you're going to take money from the residents, invest it, put it in, don't put it in the bank, put it into the community, build roads, do whatever you promised you would do that. So that's not being done. Well, let me go ahead and show you a few other very interesting things. And I'm going to start really at the beginning of the meeting. The mayor has some initial stuff that she says, but she prefaces her later when she talks about this super quorum. She's prefacing it through this legal letter. And I'm going to go ahead and play that now.
Your next document is a legal memorandum, the summary of which is, if council does not set a budget and a tax rate, the rate will default to the no new revenue rate.
Now, I do want to say, before we get too far, that this letter didn't just appear. It was dated the same day as this meeting was held. In other words, the mayor called the attorney and asked him some very specific questions. And I believe the mayor may have gotten bad information. Maybe she misunderstood, or maybe she decided to tell the council what was convenient using this letter as the backdrop. I'll let her read what it says, but listen to what she's saying. And basically it's a threat. It's saying if the council cannot establish their budget, that the law says that the budget reverts to basically the no new taxes revenue rate, which sounds okay until you understand that it actually drops what will be Courtney's proposed budget by about $300,000 or $400,000 back to what the budget was for last year, in the order of $850,000 or $60,000, something like that. It drops the tax rate accordingly to the no new revenue tax rate. So let her continue.
The city must then budget based on that rate and pass the budget in order to spend funds. As a reminder, the no new revenue rate is 0.297978 cents per hundred. So slightly less than the version we've been working on. Then I've given you this is just a summary sheet with the Excel table at the top says City of Simonton Budget Workshop 4 ad valorem rate notes. So at the last workshop, we had requests for ability to look at a version written with a 21-cent rate, a 24-cent rate. We're already working on the .3097 rate, but I also included the .297978, which is the no new revenue rate, so that you can look at what the total income. I did not separate it out into ad valorem versus sales tax or other revenue sources, but you have that in your detail. So you can see what the income is at that rate, the total income, the expense as it currently stands. Obviously that'll change once we...
Okay, so what the mayor is explaining is a little bit detailed and probably redundant. What had been asked at the last meeting is the council absolutely did not like the mayor's proposed tax rate of almost 31 cents, which would have been the highest amount that they could go without actually coming to the voters or trying to use the de minimis tax rate, which she said wouldn't work. So the council had asked the mayor, and the mayor had agreed to produce two versions, complete versions of the budget. Instead of presenting them with a 31-cent budget, go ahead and show us a 21-cent budget, because that's what we like. And Faith Haley also in the last budget said, well, go ahead and show us 24 cents because, maybe, I guess she would probably possibly consider that. Well, the mayor came back with some stacks of paper, and I'm going to show you what Faith's response was to that. But basically, there were 4 budgets she presented. They were all identical. The only change was the very first page. And apparently each of these, for each of the 4, for each of the council persons, and for her mayor herself, there were approximately over 60 pages per. So Faith did some really quick math, and you'll hear her objection. Let me get to that.
From the citizens every single year, instead of just putting it in the bank. I do not like calling it reserves. It's what money that we have in the bank. Reserves, by definition, is money that's set aside for certain purposes, and that's what the word you've used, encumbered, here. So
Encumbered means it's spoken for.
right, and so does reserves. Yes, look it up. So it is money in the bank.
This is money already spent. The
This
project just
is,
hasn't
I'm
happened yet.
speaking, Kelly. I probably have 15 hours of looking at this and calculating and thinking, and I don't know how many hours you have in it, Kelly, but I have a lot of hours in it, and it's not a decision that I've come by lightly. But I do agree, and Courtney can say it much more eloquently. She can throw out those numbers where I'm not as good at that. But I have looked at them, and I do think that we can do it. So, and I think we have money that is sitting in the bank. If we're not going to do 16 miles of road all at the same time. We all know that. So haven't done roads for years. So we need, I think, it's just a little tightening of the belt instead of, 4 pages instead of 800 pages. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Thank you.
So that is kind of a long portion, the most interesting part of which is what happens at the very end, where Faith Haley tells the mayor that the 800 pages that she printed, and when you do the math, it's probably more like 1,000, that Faith objects to that. That's a symbol of the waste that Faith sees in Simonton, and that's why Faith believes that, or at least she says, that they can tighten their belts. So let me go to the next thing that I see here. And that is Courtney Cox talks about unspent money. and the mayor doesn't like this. Now, this is part of what I consider some of the gaslighting that's going on, some of the mistruths that's being presented to the public. Number one, calling money reserves when it's really a savings account. Reserves really should be a different definition, something where we say we've reserved this money for a given purpose, not just money in the bank. Reserve sounds official, but it has no real meaning. And the council, at least the 3 members of this council, take exception. They want to call that, and they do call that, savings. But let's go ahead and let Courtney Cox talk about unspent funds.
Income as far as revenue. So the reason I ask those questions, so that makes sense, is because there's, basically all this kind of, it would appear as though that money's just kind of sitting there because there's no revenue or expense that's been kind of transferred. But if you look at the general fund revenue, our current year budget was $887,252 at 30 cents per hundred. Year to date, we have a balance remaining of $306,130.51. We also collected $116,742.39 of additional ad valorem that we did not expect because it's an estimated tax rate. We are, into August, so we've got, as accurate as this is anyway, we still show a remaining balance of $306,000. I realize that money is probably spent and or it is definitely accounted for. However, even at a 21-cent rate, we're going to be increasing the budget to $1.2 million.
So you're not actually increasing, yes, the budget will say that we're increasing to 1.2. You're not wrong about that. But don't forget, the only reason that is reflected is from the encumbered expenses from this year.
Okay, now that is where the hang-up is. And the question really is, what side of the fence do you want to be on? And the mayor jumps from one side to the other very quickly. And Courtney's point is that there are what the mayor is calling encumbered funds, which are basically funds that technically didn't get spent in this current fiscal year, 2023 through 2024, and yet they're probably going to be spent in this fiscal year, 2024 through 2025. So money that will be spent this year. So they have to be reflected in the budget. They artificially inflate the budget, but that is the number. So if you're going to use it, you have to recognize that money isn't coming out of what the mayor thinks are reserves. That's coming out of money that should have been spent this year but didn't get spent. The mayor wants to sweep that into the savings account, calling it reserves, and now that's like untouchable money. Now we need more tax money to pay for this new budget. It's kind of the way the mayor treats this. These 3 members of council are trying to get this money treated as what it is, which is money intended to be spent last year, but will have to be spent this year. Now, these monies will include potentially some road money, but we know that the roads hadn't been done since, the mayor says in this meeting, since 2020, and there is no guarantee that they'll get done in this fiscal year, although there is certainly a hope, as we as residents have been hoping for a number of years that the roads will get done. So there's money set aside in the budget for roads that technically has been pulled out of the savings from previous years that it was supposed to be done, including last year where the roads were supposed to be addressed. So these are things that the mayor's calling encumbered funds. When you take that out with Courtney's budget, the budget works, it balances, and it actually, without using this $116,000 that Courtney discovered, is additional revenue that's been brought in. Now, the mayor does not want to show this on her ledger. $116,000 did come in since she's only referring to the budget, not the budget versus actual from last year, she only wants the council to consider the budget. But what matters with any budget is the actual. What actual revenue did you bring in is a projection of what you're going to bring in this next year. Every expense that you made last year is a projection of what expenses you should have this year. The mayor is simply using the budget. The budget last year for expenses was inflated and not used. And so it's a type of gaslighting, and it's using the budget as a tool for deception. And that is the biggest thing. And so that's why I opened up this video with this whole matter of, and I'm going to let it run again, the whole matter. The mayor wants the 3 members of this council to believe that they will not get a 21-cent budget because the other 2 members of council are going to vote against it. Now, I want to point something out. I'm going to play this. I'm going to point something out that's real important. So give me a moment to cue it up.
Is there some way that somebody's gonna stop us from voting on a tax rate and a budget?
No,
No.
nobody's
Okay.
going to stop you from voting.
Okay.
But if
She's
you
saying
don't
if we
come to
can't
an
come to
agreement.
an agreement.
We don't have to.
But,
We don't have
but
to
you
all
do
do
have
it.
to have 4 people.
You
of
do have
this
to have a
board.
supermajority on the budget.
Okay, now did you notice that? Who's the one that brought up the concept of supermajority? Was it the mayor, who would have had the discussion with the attorney or would have had this knowledge implanted in her head somewhere? Or was it not Kelly Matula? And I'll answer it for you. It was Kelly Matula. She was first out of the gate. For some reason, she jumped the gun, and that's the proof. That's the proof that they had had a conversation about this. This was part of the game plan, part of the gaslighting game plan. Now, Justin doesn't jump in. I can't say that he had anything to do. I can't say he was involved in this, but clearly Kelly Matula and the mayor had a plan. Now, logically, knowing that Kelly and Justin are running mates when they ran for council, they ran on the same platform basically to support the mayor and all of her initiatives. It's only reasonable that they would have mentioned it to him because he was so staunch. By the way, this video today that I'm showing you doesn't show him defending the 31 cent, saying he can't go below it. But he does, and you're welcome to watch the video. All these time codes are embedded in the description below it. You can find that for yourself. But he does. He aligns with these 2 that are obviously in league in trying to gaslight or deceive these council members. Now, I suppose it's probably reasonable to say that it's totally possible that the mayor simply made a mistake. But you know, the mayor was on council with me. This isn't a mistake you make. The mayor has been mayor now for 7 years. This is not a mistake an experienced mayor makes. This is something that when the mayor virtually hates the people that oppose her, they don't hate her, by the way. They just wish she would straighten up and fly right. But when they literally hate, she literally hates them, and you can see by the other deceptions, and we'll talk about it, that this is just the most egregious form of deceptions. The way I always say it, the 2 most important elements of having a city, the first one is elections. You don't lie, cheat, or steal on elections. We learned that, or should have learned that in 2020. And when it comes to taxes, people care about elections, they care about taxes. And when you lie about taxes, how they're established, how they're initiated, it should call into question every action of that person, because if they're going to lie about that, what else have they lied about? This is a pretty egregious one, and I can't overstate it. Now, I'm hoping the community will understand the importance of this, because it is not at all true. These 5 city council members all were elected not to represent the mayor, but to represent you as voters, myself included. And when they turn their loyalty away from you and to the mayor, we have a problem. We have a problem, because consideration needs to be given to both sides of this issue. This matter affects Simonton's future, and we cannot make good information good decisions with bad information. In computer parlance, they call it garbage in, garbage out. This is garbage out. She's asking the council to compromise on what the council believes, or at least the majority of the council believes the citizens want, that they were elected to represent as the majority when they were elected. And the mayor is trying to use deception to get them to compromise to a number more closely aligned to her own, with the threat, the legal threat, that if they won't compromise, it's going to go up to the no new tax rate. 29, almost the same rate as we have right now. It's slightly less than 30 cents, and that's what we paid this past year. So when the mayor talks about and discusses the budget with Courtney and effectively the other two council members that really kind of agree with this and will not acknowledge that money brought in above what was budgeted is the actual money that the city has, or that money's unspent, the $306,000 Courtney's talking about that was not spent, that should be available as a resource to be spent. That's when this all begins to unravel, and the truthfulness of this mayor is called into question. And I just hope it means as much to you as it does to me. This is a terrible thing, and I'm hoping the mayor will apologize. I'm hoping that she will acknowledge publicly that she was wrong. Whether it was a simple mistake or an intentional lie, I think she needs to own it, because this was wrong. If she was going to say this out loud and use this as her reason to deny these three council members their vote, she should have made darn sure she was right, and she didn't. So, that being the case, that's really all I have to report in this. And I hope that it means something to you, because this is your city. This council is your council, and the mayor is your mayor. And Simonton deserves better. Well, that's all I got. Dan McJunkin for SimontonTexas.com saying thanks again, and I appreciate you watching.